living with an electric car, whoops. I tried to make the point that living with an electric car is way more convenient. It's a much nicer experience in a lot of ways, but convenience is one of them. And I always was challenged with that one because people would say, what do you mean convenient? And so I made this little chart. I don't believe I had it 3 years ago, but just to show you the difference between gassing up and filling up an electric car. First of all, when we do gas up our cars, we don't generally just jump out of the easy chair and say, "Dear, I'm off to get a tank of gas. I'll be right back." Generally, what happens is we're driving somewhere or we're on our way home, and we realize we need to stop and refuel, and so we have to get off our route. And sometimes it's a minor detour, but sometimes it's a big one. And then, of course, we go through all the different steps that we go through, right, when we fill up our gas cars. And then when they're finally filled and we've paid for it, we climb in the car, we drive back out, and we get back on our route. And that all takes a bit of time. I'm going to say 9 minutes to refuel your gas car. I hope you think that's fair. Obviously, that can change depending on your situation. But let's look at what it's like to refuel an electric car. Here, I'm just coming home. This is where I planned to come anyway. I didn't have to go anywhere special. I just drove home. And when I get out of the car, instead of turning right to go into the house, you'll see me turn left. And all I need to do is pick up the charging cable, press a little button, which opens a port on the car. I put it in, and you know what? I'm done. That's it. That's all the time that I need to spend with my car to refuel it. And when I timed that, it was actually just under 10 seconds to do that. And you can appreciate that if you had to fill up once a week with your gas car, you're spending roughly 8 hours a year involved in refueling your vehicle. Whereas if you plug in an electric car every single day, which is, they say leave it plugged in when you're not using it, just leave it plugged in. If you add up the time for 365 days, it's about an hour of year of my time. But that's not really, where the convenience is with this, because here in this beautiful country we live in, at least 3 months of the year, you probably look like this poor guy, right? It's just not always the most pleasant experience when you're refueling your car, and you're doing it for a longer period of time than I am. So while you're still out there doing that, I've gone back into the house, and I've gone about my business and realized I should change I still haven't changed my nail polish color on my feet, but you get the idea. You're still dealing with it. I'm done. It just takes a few seconds and we're on with life. It's very convenient. I don't think I did this 3 years ago to demonstrate, and I would often do a poll with this particular graphic. But if you were to think about it, and I don't have our new stats in for 2022, but according to Statistics Canada's 2021 update, how many charging locations would you guess there are now in the province of Ontario? How many places do you think you could go and charge your car? I'll let you pick one. Nobody will know what you said, but I'll let you pick one. And then I'm going to tell you that if you picked D, over 2.7 million places to charge an electric car, you'd be correct. And you might wonder where that comes from, and I'll explain it. When you own an electric car, you charge it at home. You just do. It's just very convenient to do it. It's actually the least expensive place to charge. And why wouldn't you? You've got electricity. Most of us have it in our homes. There are over 2.7 million fully detached single-family homes in the province of Ontario. And as I say, I think most of them have electricity. So this figure does not even factor in all of the purpose-built electric car charging stations. There are many more than this. But it's not really kind of a trick. I just want to drive home the point that if 95% of us who own these cars refuel at home, you need to count the home as a refueling station. It's just not the way we were brought up, and not our experience for those of us who've been driving for many years. Just for fun and for comparison's sake, StatsCan says that there are 12,000 gas stations in the province of Ontario. So since I was here last, of course, a lot of companies have stepped out and said that they are ditching and discontinuing gas and diesel power plants in their vehicles. And this chart is not even complete. This was done a while ago. I can tell you now, I can't think of a company, I'm sure there are a couple, but I can't think of a company now in the automotive industry who isn't ending the production of internal combustion engines within a pretty quick time frame. The ones who don't make this transition won't survive. They won't survive. And some of them are pretty darn big companies that we've known about for a long, long time. They may survive, but they'll come out the other end looking very different. But the other thing I talked about it the last time I was here, I said that electric cars would soon be capable of doing something that I think's rather amazing.
Have you ever been in the grocery store and it starts to rain? Of course, it would be nice if someone pulled your car up for you.
That does sound nice. Now, there's some technology that allows the car to do just that itself. Brandon Simmons shows us how it works.
I think anyone that drives one for a day, they would have trouble going back.
Bill Painter has been a proud Tesla owner since the beginning of the year, and he'll tell you he's obsessed with his ride.
It's better than any other car out there, and it's good for the environment.
The all-electric Tesla brand is known for its autopilot feature that lets you sit back while the car drives itself down the road, keeping with the flow of traffic and changing lanes too. But they recently added a new feature called Smart Summit, taking things to another level.
Say you don't want to walk all the way to your car, and it'll come to you.
All you do is open the app, and the car will plot a path toward you, making corrections for people and traffic along the way. It only moves when your finger's on the screen of your smartphone. When you let go, it stops. A car moving without a driver was enough to turn heads in the parking lot. Many people stopping to ask questions about what they were seeing.
Okay, it'll drive itself. That is awesome.
It freaked me out when I parked the car. I mean, there's nobody behind the wheel. That thing is awesome.
The car uses a number of cameras and sensors all around it to navigate the lot and adjust when obstacles or cars are around. Drivers using technology have caused thousands of accidents over the years. This time around, technology is working in our favor and will likely get even better with time.
The truth is, distracted driving's on the rise, and it's making the streets more dangerous. To have technology on your side assisting and helping and letting you take the bigger processes, and it's definitely a safer option.
So don't be surprised to see drivers not holding the steering wheel or missing from the driver's seat altogether. I'm Brandon Simmons, 3 News.
Yeah, and so that is happening. I mean, it's amazing. And again, that is not a new clip. That's been a while ago, and things have really been improving over time in the car's capabilities. In fact, my now aging Tesla Model X is still learning lots of tricks. I'm still receiving software updates that improve the car's capability to drive on its own. I have that self-driving package with my older car. It needed some physical updates to be able to function fully, and I think it still needs one. But it's pretty amazing feeling. It will not drive by itself yet, and you cannot depend on it to drive by itself yet. But that you can see that's getting closer at hand. So let's talk about a look at the future, and what does this all mean? I mean, it's a cute parlor trick, but what are the other implications? A lot of people, you know what, are really skeptical about self-driving cars. It's hard for people to believe that this really could be happening. But I assure you it is. And maybe to help you get through that thought process, if you just think about some of the things that we've seen in our lifetime, and this is in our lifetime. Remember the first time we had a color TV set at home, I came home and I'll tell you what a surprise and a delight that was. But since then, things have changed a little bit, right? Now we hang the darn TV, it's 5 times the size, and we hang it on the wall like a picture. You know, we've seen some remarkable changes in technology in our lifetime. Think about, anybody recognize this character? Dick Tracy. And it was pure science fiction that he wore something on his wrist that he could communicate with. It just seemed like, you know, something from out there, way out there. But of course now, not only can you communicate through the thing on your wrist, it'll give you your heart rate and your blood oxygen level and all manner of things. If you fall, it'll phone somebody automatically. I mean, this is in our lifetime. We've seen this kind of technological advancement. And what about this? This is actually a camera that I had growing up, and I took some pretty good pictures with that. But photography, right? Now you've seen that change from sort of analog to digital happening with photography. And what's really interesting is that, you know, this digital photography has replaced the old film cameras, but it's not standing still. It's actually becoming difficult to sell these digital cameras anymore, for the simple reason that there's a more convenient option that's getting better and better through digital photography. So a friend once said that the best camera you can have is the one that you have with you. And so these phones meet that need as well. So a lot of strange things, right? What about this one? This is probably the biggest one. In our lifetime, we've seen the introduction of the internet. And what we hear now in the media is the Internet of Things, because so many of the devices we use every day, heck, we're meeting right now, aren't we? We're meeting over the internet. That wouldn't have been possible 30 years ago. And so many other things now are pulled into the internet world. So that you see how, you know, if you stand back and think about the rapid pace of technological development, it starts to become easier. It starts to become easier to picture self-driving cars. Now, it may be really hard to understand exactly how that would work, and what if it's snowing, and what, you know, all of the possible weird situations that we encounter when we drive. How can this possibly happen without a driver? Well, I don't understand exactly how it will be working, but I can believe quite easily that it will happen and that it is possible. So a little bit about this self-driving technology. But before we get into it, I wanted to, you know, obviously we have to take some care with these things. For example, Toyota found out they put too much technology into the car, and the result isn't always what you expect.
Starting this year, Toyota and Lexus luxury models will come with Amazon Alexa.
Alexa, turn on the AC.
Turning on AC.
Finally, a virtual assistant to help you navigate.
Alexa, where's the nearest gas station?
Nearest gas station in 1.5 miles.
And to help maintain your vehicle.
Alexa, order more brake pads.
Ordering new brake pads. Although maybe if you didn't stop so close to the car in front of you.
I left plenty of room.
You drive too aggressively.
If you were just quiet for 2 seconds, 2 seconds.
She'll talk to you literally the entire time you're driving.
I think you should have turned back there.
I know where I'm going!
Hi, you know why I pulled you over?
No, officer, I have...
Because we were driving 72 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone.
Anything else I should know?
2 miles back, we rolled through a stop sign without coming to a complete stop. Also, there are illegal fireworks in the trunk.
Sir, I'm gonna need you to step out of the car, please.
Amazon Alexa. You'll never get away from her.
Yeah, so you get the idea, right? I mean, you can definitely go too far with technology, and you have to be careful. There are so many things to consider when you think about self-driving vehicles. You know, and a lot of them, some of them are social, I'll talk about, but things like just regulations and insurance. You know, 2 self-driving cars get into an accident, who's at fault? How do you decide that? And you know, insurance companies, they're going to have to really you know, step up and figure this all out. It's not going to be easy, but that's just because of technology, right? These things have to be addressed. So how does a car see? How does a car see?
It all begins with the understanding that just like a human can understand by looking what things are, where they are, and infer what they intend to do, the computer should be able to do the same.
So this is the basic system. So we have here the camera sensor and the lens. So this is the camera part. Here's the processor, our IQ processor. And this is the board which does everything which we need.
The forward-looking camera behind the rearview mirror sees what the driver sees. The software interprets the camera image. Artificial intelligence now has to draw the correct conclusions. But how can that be done without precise sensor data? Instead of using precise range measurements, the algorithms use the information from the camera's image to make a clever estimate. For instance, when calculating the distance.
There we use perspective. We look at the bottom of the target, if it's the vehicle or pedestrian, where the bottom is in the image, and its distance from the horizon gives us information about the distance to that vehicle. It's a bit more complicated than that, but that's the basic idea.
They use a lot of different technology, in fact, in these cars. There are different approaches to self-driving cars by different car manufacturers, but generally speaking, they all use a variety of sensors and capabilities, cameras being probably the most important for the car to understand the environment it's in. You will hear, if you haven't already, you'll hear a lot about 5 levels of autonomy, of autonomous cars. Level 1 is what we've had for some time. It's a driver. You may have some sensors like cruise control, adaptive cruise control, and so on. Level 2, now the car is capable of driving, but the driver has to be ready all the time to take control, just in case the system fails to recognize a potential hazard. That is where we are today in, for example, my Tesla self-driving vehicle and a variety of others, General Motors and so on. They all have a version of self-driving, but no one is really much past level 2. Now, when you get to level 3, which is the next step, the car can drive safely and the driver won't need to pay attention. But there may be situations where the driver needs to intervene. So the car may encounter a situation that it doesn't know how to get past, and so the driver will need to take over. But otherwise, you could essentially just relax and take it easy. When you get to level 4, now the car drives itself almost all the time and very rarely needs any human input. But it might also be programmed not to drive, for example, in extreme weather. But otherwise, this is a car at level 4, you would be able to sleep in it while it's traveling. And finally, level 5, which is the the holy grail, that's where full automation is available in any driving condition, any circumstances. So you can see there's a long way to go yet from level 2 where we are to level 5. But that's just the state of affairs. Now, and there are a lot of benefits, right, to self-driving cars, but the biggest one, of course, is fewer fatalities. I think I mentioned this 3 years ago, that a lot of people die in car accidents, somewhere in the order of 40,000 in the United States alone every year. And that 94% now, they estimate, are caused, of those accidents, those fatalities, are caused by the same thing, which is basically a nut loose behind the wheel. People aren't being careful. They're distracted, they're tired, they're maybe impaired. But 94% of all those fatalities are caused by human error. So you can imagine the benefit of a self-driving vehicle in a scenario. And what will autonomous vehicles change in our society? Well, first of all, of course, fewer fatal crashes. You're going to see about a 10 times reduction. That's what some of the experts are predicting. 10 times lower cost for mobility. Just a quick note on that. The cost of the batteries in electric cars, of course, are one of the biggest expense items. But once you start to reduce the cost of batteries, which has been going on at an incredibly rapid pace, faster than anyone expected, you bring the cost of those cars down. I promise within probably a year, but I'm going to say 2 years, there will be a variety of electric cars on the market available at parity with a comparable gas car. And that's to purchase. They're already cheaper to own, by the way, but to purchase. And within a year or two after that, the battery costs aren't going to stop declining. And pretty soon, it's going to be significantly cheaper to buy an electric car than a gas car or a diesel car. And then when you consider that you don't have to pay someone to drive it in the case of a taxi or delivery, that brings costs down even more. You're going to see, I think you're going to see transportation as a service take off. I don't know whether coronavirus will mute this a little bit or delay it, but it will be a subscription service, just like you have Netflix and you pay so much a month. You'll be able to pay for a self-driving car service, and whenever you need to go somewhere, you just call up on your phone. A driverless car will meet you at your front door, take you where you want to go, and probably a different car will take you home when you're ready to come back. But you'll see it. People won't have to spend all that money to buy an expensive car. And because of that, personal car ownership will decline. And I think the automobile companies know this really, really well, right? It's why when you look at what they're doing, they're all feverishly trying to perfect self-driving vehicles, because they know that once that comes and becomes affordable for people, people will stop buying cars, right? Why would you buy a car and just leave it parked most of the time, when you could just call one up for cheap? You're going to see increases in productivity. I don't know if I like this one, but certainly there'll be less congestion on the road. You'll be able to work while you're driving. All the spaces now, in the cities that we have hugely valuable chunks of real estate that right now are just sitting there for people to park their cars in at exorbitant rates, by the way. But you can imagine that these cars don't need to stop and park anymore. They'll be able to continue driving and picking people up. So a lot of the parking lots can be repurposed and used for other things. Of course, this contributes to greater independence for those people who are unable to drive themselves. Again, you just call up a car, picks you up, and away you go. And I mentioned this last time, I'm sure, and I still stand by it. A child born within the last 3 years will never need to learn to drive a car. Just won't be necessary. And if they do, they're going to pay a lot in insurance rates. So what else these self-driving cars mean? Well, how about this one? You can, with that smart wristwatch on your arm that knows your heart rate and your health condition, it's not hard to imagine that the car itself could monitor the driver's vitals and then take control. If you happen to have a stroke or a heart attack while motoring along, the car would know that immediately and then take over and probably be programmed to take you to the nearest hospital. So here's another little factor. Right now, there are over 1 million cars in the Greater Toronto area. And those of us who own cars, when you think about it, you realize they're only used 4% of the time. 96% of the time, they're just parked. That's a lot of idle use for over 1 million vehicles at the cost of cars today. So if you had autonomous cars instead, if you could snap your fingers and switch the whole fleet to self-driving, you would find that you would only need 50,000 cars to do all the miles that the 1 million cars currently do, because they don't need to stop and rest. They only need to stop and charge. So you can imagine the reduction in number of vehicles that would be required. And that's simply just a graphic form of the same comment. To do the same number of miles, this is how many cars you would need at some point in the future, like when everything is autonomous. But it's going to have a big impact on dealer sales and car sales and traffic. Now, the big one, disruption. I can't begin to overstate this one. The effects of self-driving vehicles will be cascading, and they will be profound. I can only begin to think about how it's going to affect things. Every industry linked to transportation will be impacted, and pretty much every industry is in some fashion linked to transportation. The good thing or bad thing, depending on where you stand, is that this all won't happen overnight. It's going to take some time to replace the existing fleet of gas vehicles. People aren't going to just walk away from them. They're going to use them up. So it'll take a while. But think about it. Just 150 years ago, 80% of all employment was in agriculture. And today that's less than 3%. And yet we still have, by and large, full employment. People find jobs doing other things. And so it will be with this disruption. I predict it's going to be painful and it's going to be difficult. But at the end of the day, other technologies replace the outgoing technology, and we'll still function. People will still find work. And I think this is the last point I wanted to talk about in serious terms is societal acceptance. Well, how do you feel about a self-driving car? Because I know I get a pretty strong reaction from lots of people when I talk about it. So electric vehicles will save lives. They'll save a lot of lives because they're not electric, but autonomous vehicles. But they won't be perfect, right? There's certain things about physics you can't predict and control necessarily. So I want to think about this. Suppose that 20,000 of those 40,000 people who are dying every year in the States are spared by autonomous vehicle technology. So you save 20,000 lives. Now that's pretty great achievement, I think. I hope you would agree. And that's really worth pursuing. But there's another way of looking at that. Let's just flip that around and say, okay, that could be true, but that also means that the other 20,000 people who would die each year would die in self-driving cars. So they're going to get killed in self-driving cars. So how do you feel now? You still excited about hopping into one? You see the point. The fact is it's safer, but society needs to understand that and believe it to be true before they'll fully adopt self-driving cars. And then, of course, there's there are other ethical considerations. One of them is referred to often in the literature as the trolley problem. And you can imagine a self-driving car going down a busy street in the city and suddenly confronts a situation where it's going to hit something. It's either going to hit a bus or it's going to hit a group of 4 or 5 people standing on the side of the road. It has to make a choice. And so the car is going to have to do that. Well, what if it had a choice? It couldn't avoid either hitting 5 people, old people on the right side of the road and 5 young people on the left. Now it's still got to choose. You can see that these decisions aren't easy, and they'll have to be addressed in some fashion. So the last thing, you might be wondering, well, if these driverless electric cars are buzzing around, who's going to charge them? How are they going to charge? Well, this is one way. It's kind of creepy. You can imagine that you wouldn't want to turn your back on one of these things, but this was a device that was created relatively early on, and it just detects where the opening is once you pull up, and away it goes. Yeah, I know. I apologize for anybody who has a medical exam in the next little while, but that's how that works. Now, of course, this probably won't be the way we do it. It could be, but there's also you could do induction pads. So you just pull your car into the garage or into the parking spot, and it drives over top of a pad that can wirelessly recharge the battery. So my takeaways from the talk today, I hope I can leave you with a few thoughts. First of all, you have to believe that technology isn't slowing down. The advancement is actually accelerating. Things are happening even faster than they have in our past experience. You can believe that large companies older established companies and brand new companies are all racing to achieve autonomous vehicles and the technology involved. You can believe that industry disruption is going to occur on a very massive scale. And you can also accept that our personal mobility, how we choose to get around, is going to be very different in the future. On the good side, we'll be saving a lot of lives through this technology.
Once upon a time, before you girls were born, no one had cell phones, and families had to share a single phone.
You mean like Mom could read my texts?
There was no texting. It was a landline.
Ew, gross. What about selfies?
Well, you could take a selfie, but then you had to get it developed.
No!
It could take days. And scariest of all, instead of electric cars, we used to fill up our vehicles with gas that was made from animals that have been dead for millions of years and burned it to drive around.
Nice try, Dad.
That's not scary. That's just stupid.
And that concludes my talk. So I will exit my screen share. And if you want to have a chat, any questions, be happy to do my best to answer.
Okay, guys, speak up. Don't be shy.
I have a couple, Tim.
Sure.
Jack Rugg here. First of all,
Sorry, Jack.
We're back now. Unmute yourselves.
Yeah. Okay, hear me now, Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just read a review in Consumer Reports about the new Tesla Model S, and I understand they went to a yoke type steering wheel like they have in a Formula One cars, and they said it was their testers didn't like it at all. They said it was very awkward. Are you aware of this?
Yeah, actually, I know one person who has taken delivery of a vehicle that's so equipped, and yeah, it's polarizing. If you read, like as I do, a lot of reaction and commentary about that particular decision, it seems split, and it seems to be a learning curve. People don't like it at first because, you know, you go to back up and turn the wheel, and you find out that the wheel isn't there. So a lot of people are uncomfortable with that, but then they learn to adapt to it, and then they kind of like it. So we'll see how that pans out for them in the future. They seem pretty stuck on doing it.
They're not offering an option of getting a traditional round steering wheel?
Not at this point. No, they're sticking to their guns.
Okay, the other, just a quick one. The other one was you made the point it only takes 10 seconds when you get home to plug in your car to charge it each time. If, like most of us boomers who are on, like to go on road trips, how quickly can you charge up a car if you stop at a service center or something?
Yeah, so chargers for electric cars are built in different ways. And Alan, I don't know if you know you're sharing your screen there, so we can't see each other too well. But there are different kinds of chargers. The one you have at home takes a few hours to charge your car. But on major highways, if for folks who are traveling a distance, there are really fast chargers out there. Tesla has its own network. They built them when they started building cars, and they're right across North America now. You can go anywhere in with these fast chargers. And to charge your car on these things, you're probably looking at, if your battery's close to empty, you can probably get a 80% fill up in, I'm going to say 30 minutes, maybe. But that's changing too. Every single new electric car that comes out is made with new battery chemistries and technology to speed up that charging process. Excuse me. And every new fast charger that's being installed, when they're being installed every day now, is being installed with higher and higher power output. So, which means faster charging. So it's a moving target. It'll be a while before it's as fast as filling your tank up with gas. But you know what? If you can drive for 4 or 5 hours on the highway, you pretty much need to stop. I know I do. And so if you can get a recharge in 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes, whatever, it's about the time it takes for a bio break and a cup of coffee. I find I've driven to Florida, I've driven out to the East Coast, I've driven on long trips. It's not a major inconvenience at all.
Okay, thanks, Tim. I can think of 10 or 20 other questions, but I'll turn it over to some of the other fellows in the group.
Sure. Thanks, Jack.
Tim, I have a question.
Sure.
They claim that as far as the environment is concerned, the
Can we
electric
get Alan
vehicle.
to take us off screen?
Sorry. I'm trying to ask a question to Tim.
Yeah, we're looking at Alan's screen, which is frustrating.
Just stop share, Alan.
I don't know how to get rid of it.
There should be a toolbar at the top. If you put your cursor at the very top of the screen.
Yeah.
It says.
Well, all I can see is Tim himself, but you're just small. You're on full screen, and I'm not sure how to change it.
Well, if you look at the top, it says share content.
There, so.
Yeah, you have to look for the button that says stop share.
I can't see it anywhere.
I've got a picture of Europe, and it says it's. I have a picture of Europe, and it says it's recording.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
if you move your cursor, Alan, you may find it turns up.
Yeah, it pops into it disappears until you put your cursor near it, and it's usually at the top of the screen. So if you put your cursor right at the top, at the top.
In the black in the black bar there.
Right corner. Yeah, in the black bar, you're right.
Well, I've got a regular screen and just a small section with Tim in it, and there are 4 icons. One's blue, and that must be the one that we have. That must be you. Then there's one which says show grid video. So now I'm getting 6 people on here. And I can scroll through them, but if I'm still on the main screen, I apologize. I don't know how to get rid of it.
Well, you have a nice shot there of a church somewhere in Europe.
You did something in order to get us onto the screen, Alan. I don't know.
Anyway,
Alan, the only other thing I can think right now is to go out and come back in.
Oh, well, never mind. We're almost done here. I have a question, or actually Peter has a question.
Just a minute. Peter was asking the question.
Yeah.
Okay, Tim, the question was, people are saying that driving an electric car is not as, say, friendly to the environment as they claim, because, there is a cost ecologically to produce the electricity. So what is the deal there? Is it better or same or what?
It's absolutely better. So there's a lot to unpack with that, because if you're just talking about the fuel side of the equation, you have to remember that gas and oil the petrochemical industry has a huge environmental footprint. Everything from fracking to refining and all of that. As a matter of fact, it takes, I forget the number, I need to write it down. The amount of electricity it takes to make gas and oil is phenomenal. You'd be surprised. To make the electric car, where the environmental damage, if you will, is done is on the mining side of things. So these minerals that are used in battery production don't come without an environmental cost. but all the studies show you're far and away better to drive electric. Even, and in Ontario, we're really actually quite lucky because our electrical grid is extremely clean. We no longer burn any coal. Gas is only used for peaker plants. So when everyone has their air conditioning on and the nukes can't keep up, then these gas things click on. They're going to be stranded assets, by the way, because once, I'm going off on a tangent here, but once the newer electric cars that are coming now, they have charging that's called bi-directional. So the power doesn't just flow from the grid into your battery anymore. It can flow the other way. And so you can use it to your car as a backup generator for your house. And the utility, the electrical utilities, they're all looking at how they could buy the electricity that's in your battery during peak hours, so that you would actually feed the grid from your battery pack. And get paid for it. So you could charge at night when it's cheap and sell it back to them when it's expensive and they need it. And then they can get rid of all these peaker plants that they're maintaining and running. And there's lots of neat stuff happening, but I promise you electric are cleaner.
Just one quick last comment. For those that may not have noticed, in our little shopping center here in Maple Grove, the city has actually installed 2 charging stations.
Yeah,
Tim, I have a question.
Sure.
It's been an interesting winter so far in Canada, and historically low temperatures in the West. Just exactly how does an electric car perform in 50 or 45 below zero temperature? How long does the charge last?
So you, for sure, with the current battery chemistries being used, you will see a reduction in range in extreme cold weather. It can be, and I'm going to give you the worst case scenario. Let's say it's minus 25. You left your car parked outside, so it's stone cold in the morning, and it snowed out. And so you're pulling out of your driveway, and not only are you starting off with a dead cold battery, you're driving through snow, and that creates rolling resistance on the wheels, which requires more energy to move the car, which affects your range. So worst case scenario, you're probably going to see somewhere on the order of a 40% reduction in your range.
Squirrel jumped from the Niger feeder to the other one.
So,
and he caught on in time. He didn't hit the ground. His toes grabbed into the mesh with the other one.
Galen, close yourself off. Mute yourself.
Yeah. So you have to remember that any car you buy now, in all likelihood, it's going to have, a minimum of 400 kilometers of range. So if you lose 40%, unless you're going on a pretty long drive, you're not even going to care or notice. If you are going on a long drive, even if you're going on a short drive, there are ways to mitigate this. So remember, I described that EV drivers leave their cars plugged in when they're not using them. If that's the case, you're going to go out in the morning and it's frigid, it's been cold. You can, from your phone, from the car's app on your smartphone, you can start conditioning the battery while it's still plugged in. And it'll warm up the battery, the cabin, everything. And then you just drive away toasty and warm, and you don't take the huge hit on range. You'll still take some, but so does your gas car. It doesn't do so well in snow either, in cold weather. But yeah, I've had now 7 winters with electric cars. I started in 2013, and I've had 2 different cars. My wife now drives an electric car, a different one than mine. And winter's just not a problem. It's as a matter of fact, I belong to EV Society, and our members who reside in the Western provinces, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, they're all throwing out comments about, well, it was minus 35, and when I was going to work down my street, 4 of my neighbors couldn't get their cars started. But it's not an issue with an electric car. It's the cold weather doesn't affect it in that way at all.
Tim, I have a question concerning the cost of installing an in-garage. Could you give me an idea of what it costs for you to put that one in, or what it might cost today?
Yeah, I spent in total about $800 to do mine. And mine's probably fairly typical, maybe a little bit less. I did it with a friend. All you need for so I'll back up a little bit. Chargers, people ask me about, do you have a charger for your electric cars in your garage? And I'll answer sort of superficially, yes, I have a charger, but I don't. The chargers for all electric cars, regardless of what brand you choose, the chargers are built into the car. And so all the car needs is some electrical source to plug into. And as a result, they're sold usually with a variety of adapters. So you can plug it into a 110 outlet and get a charge. It's just painfully slow and it's not practical in cold weather for the reasons I just recently described. But you can get a full charge from a 110 outlet. What you need in Ontario, and I think is the best thing, is simply the same kind of plug that you have for an electric stove or an electric dryer, but put it either in your garage or out in the driveway so you can plug your car into it.
As a supplement to my question, do you know if people who live in condos, if they've had a challenge to convince their condo committee to have one installed or allow one to be installed at the owner's cost?
Yeah, so the way the laws are written at the moment, if you happen to live in a condominium and you decide that you want a charger at your car spot, you go to the condo board with a request. The condo board cannot say no outright. If they're going to decline your request, they have to, at their expense, conduct an engineering report or study to demonstrate that there is some reason why a charger isn't possible in that condo. Otherwise, you're allowed to do it. Now, you will have to pay for that yourself. And depending on where your car is located in the parking garage relative to the condo building's electrical panel, it could be expensive or it could be relatively inexpensive. What we have a lot of people I deal with who are in the business now of retrofitting old condominiums with car chargers, car charging capability. And there are a lot of really clever solutions. If any of you live in a condo and you are faced with this issue, what I would do is I would try and poll my fellow condominium owners to find out how many other people might be interested in doing this. And if you can do it as a group, you can save a lot of money. And it will cost you still money. But remember that in condos, your parking spot is generally deeded to you. Therefore, it's a capital improvement. And your condo is going to be worth more and be far more saleable if it has car charging, because that's what everyone's going to be driving in a not too distant future. So,
thank you.
Long-winded answer.
Tim, I have a question relative to a used electric car. Are they of value? Because you said the battery is primarily the major portion of the cost. So what's your comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Used EVs are an incredible bargain. It's always going to be buyer beware. So a couple of points. I don't want to dump on one particular car manufacturer who hasn't. A really popular car at the outset and still pretty popular is the Nissan Leaf, all-electric Leaf. Beautiful car. I've driven them. They're amazing cars, but they do not employ any sort of battery management, thermal management of the battery, which means if they get too hot, they'll slow down and they won't charge as quickly on a fast charger. If you live in a warm climate, not our concern, but people who have them in hot climates find that the batteries don't last very long, don't last too long. And so I would steer clear of a used Nissan Leaf unless I knew the owner and knew the history of it. But the rest of them, electric cars are undervalued in the used market. People still don't really trust them. They don't understand how simple they are. It's an electric motor. I mean, the rest of the car is the same as a gas. It still has shocks and springs and wheels and all that sort of thing. but electric cars that are used are going to last a long time. There also is a government incentive that you can get through an organization called Plug and Drive if you decide to buy an electric used. And then there's a $5,000 federal grant if you buy a brand new electric.
So what would it cost to replace the battery if you bought a used one and needed to replace it? That's got to be expensive.
Yeah, it wouldn't be worth it.
So,
Unless it was done under warranty, because like most of these cars are, the new factory warranty is pretty darn great. Mine is 8 years, unlimited miles. That's the warranty on the battery pack. 8 years and unlimited miles.
so what happens after 8 years? What happens to the vehicle?
Well, that's just the warranty period. Doesn't mean it stops working after 8 years. That's just the warrant. The new car warranty is 8 years. They'll last much longer. So right now we're seeing routine lifespan on these batteries of, on the ones that have been out in the market for a while, 300 to 500,000 kilometers. Essentially, the batteries will outlast the vehicle. The car is going to fall apart around it. So, yeah, so I do. I should do a little commercial message for the Electric Vehicle Society, which this organization I belong to. They asked me some time ago if I would do a webinar. And I started doing a webinar over a year ago, and it's called Canada Talks Electric Cars webinar. And one of the guests I had on is a fellow Canadian who's has started up a substantial recycling program for lithium-ion batteries. It's called Li-Cycle. And he did one of my webinars, and they're all recorded, and there's a playlist. I've put it in the chat. So if anybody wants to go and see any of the past episodes, if you have an interest, like there's one about condo charging, there's another episode I did about batteries and dealing with end of life of batteries, a bunch of different topics there. So just click on that link and you'll get the playlist.
Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
The other thing I put in here is one of our sons-in-laws has a Tesla. He got the original one and he just absolutely loves it. He travels all over North America. Initially, he was a little apprehensive about going down to Pittsburgh to the various hockey and football games, but he figured that out, how to do it. He goes all over the place. He had a Nissan before. And so what he did is he sat down with a spreadsheet and looked over a 5-year period, comparing the bills that he'd had before, the bills that he was expecting forward, and compared that to the buying a Tesla, and he bought a Tesla the next day.
Yeah, awesome.
It's been unreal. If you could maybe mention, just from a warranty point of view, on an annual basis, because they cover so much, on an annual basis, what your costs are, because you don't have oil changes, you don't have spark plugs, da-da-da-da-da-da. So roughly while you're in warranty, what are your costs per year?
Gosh, well, so my cost, my major expense is tires. Electric cars are heavy because the way the batteries are at this stage in their development is they tend to be quite heavy. They're low, and so the center of gravity is really good, makes the car nice to drive, but they are very heavy and they wear out tires a little bit faster than a gas car has been my experience. So that's my big expense. So it depends how much you drive, right? How quickly you might wear out a set of tires. Beyond that, the brakes are, all of these electric cars in one form or another have what we call regenerative braking. So you're going down the highway at 100 kilometers an hour, and you lift your foot off I won't say gas pedal, the accelerator pedal quickly. What happens is the electric motor in that car suddenly becomes a generator, and it takes the motion of the car going down at 100 kilometers an hour, spinning that generator now, and puts energy back into the battery, which helps your range. But in doing so, it puts a tremendous drag on the car and slows it down aggressively. So, and it even puts the brake lights on. Just lifting your foot off the gas pedal puts the brake lights on in these cars. And so Nothing is touching your brake pads or your discs, right? It's all done magnetically through the motor, the permanent magnet in the motor. And so you're not wearing anything out every time you brake. It's only in emergency stops that you're actually connecting your brakes. So brakes last a long time. That's not an expense that you're going to deal with probably for at least 100,000 kilometers. What I do pay for every year is about, I think it's $74 to have Tesla take my brakes apart, clean them, lubricate them, and put them back because of our crappy winters, right? We're driving through all this slush and crap. So rather than let them getting dirty and rusting out, they clean them and lubricate them. That's $74. I have to replace the fob or the battery in my key fob. But that's, I think, 98 cents. You have to put washer fluid in it because your windshield washers need fluid. And as regular expenses, that's all I can think of.
What's your insurance like? Is it less than other cars or it's the same?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's the same. I was driving Lexus ES350 which is a full-size sedan, when I bought my first electric car, which was a Tesla Model S, same size roughly. And my insurance, I put the same coverage on the Tesla as I had on the Lexus, and my insurance went down $40 a year. It was not significant. And I don't think it has anything, it has less to do with a car being electric versus gas than insuring a car that has all this collision avoidance technology. If the car can drive by itself, you know that it's got all kinds of anti-collision capabilities and alarms and safeguards. And so they're safer. And the insurance companies see that in their actuary tables and their studies. And so they're reflecting that in the cost of insurance, not just because it's electric, but because it has all this great technology.
Tim, Jack Rugg here again. Do you have a feel for percentage-wise how much extra electricity you use now compared to, say, 2012 before you had an electric vehicle?
Yeah, I can give it to you in a pretty good example. So the last year that I worked at the distillery, and I was VP of sales there, so I had a company car. They paid for my gas and maintenance on my cars, to put it that way. So of course, I got this electric car, right? And I'm going, oh crap! I used to just expense all my gas. Now what am I going to do? Well, it turns out you can download your daily electrical use through your electrical supplier. You can download it directly into a spreadsheet and show it by the hour, how much your house uses by the hour, both in kilowatts and in dollars and cents. And so what I did was I just set my car to charge at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And from 1 to 2, my house used 5 cents worth of electricity. From 2 to 4, it used $5. And then from 4 to 5, it would go back to 5 cents. So I could easily calculate how much I was using in electricity on my bill. Okay. Now, the comparison at the time, I was spending $80 every 6 days on gas. That's about, I couldn't go a full week on a full tank of gas. It was about $80. I got the electric car, and over the course of the year, it increased my electric bill by $80 a month. So another way of stating it, it's about 25% of the cost of gasoline to charge your car. It's very inexpensive. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Are there any other questions for Tim?
Can I make just one observation? I'm not a political person, but one of the things that recently happened was that one of our Canadian mines, a lithium mine, was sold to the Chinese.
Mm.
And it's bothered me on occasion when I hear these things that our natural resources that are going to be extremely valuable in the future are not being more adequately protected for our own use and for export use of ourselves, rather than the Chinese being allowed to buy them, where they will have total control over the over the destination of the product. Just an observation.
Yeah, that's a good one, Bob. It's something that needs to be guarded and watched. I totally agree. I can tell you that the Canadian industry in its various tentacles touching the automotive industry is well aware of Canada being actually in one of the best positions worldwide to get into electric vehicle manufacturing. We have all of the resources. We have all of the skilled labor. We have everything we need to absolutely dominate in this trade. We've even been making cars here for a long time. There are usually US companies doing it or other companies, but we have that skill set.
And if we start that up, we'll have to buy the lithium from the Chinese.
We will have to, well, they didn't buy everything, but you're right. If we're not careful, we'll end up selling all those resources if that's just the quickest way to make a buck. And I hope that's not the case. We just need to move faster than we're moving.
I believe we do. I believe we do. And it's a political decision, and getting politicians to move on these things is virtually impossible.
Yeah, well, we even have, and again, I don't want to get political either, but we have in Ontario a government that canceled, I can't believe I'm saying it, they canceled the building code requirement to put rough in electric car charging in multi-unit residential buildings in the building code. So, I mean, we have a government that pulled out the GO train station near me in Waterdown, Ontario, had put in just 110, just little 110 like block heater outlets in their parking lot so that people could, in charge for it, people could plug in while they were at work and get a charge. The government pulled those out when that government came into place. I don't understand it. Anyway, I don't want to get political. It's things may change.
Another very quick point is the body on the electric cars are very good as far as they're very well made, and the rust factor is extremely low, if not non-existent. So it's not just the batteries, etc. The bodies themselves are very well made, and on our son-in-law's car, there's just zero rust 4 to 5 years later.
Yeah, your son, his car is aluminum. The body is all aluminum. And so, I mean, it's not impervious to corrosion, but it's, you know, it's, I mean, they do a pretty good job with all cars these days. It's not like the old days, right, where they rust out in 3 years. They last pretty well. And I want to, if I may, I just want to leave the conversation. I don't want to leave without mentioning that I am a big Tesla fan. I think they're rocking the industry. They're forcing all this change on everybody. By doing some really good stuff. But it doesn't mean Tesla is the only car you should look at. There are some other brilliant cars already on the market. And this year, 2022, look out. I mean, everybody's flipping the switch and making this move. It's happening faster than anybody thought. Right now, you can buy Hyundai Kona, which is a small SUV. It has over 400 kilometers of all electric range, and it's selling for 45 grand, and you get 5 grand off that. The cars are still expensive on the sticker price, but not if you look at the cost of owning it for a few years. That the gas price, I mean, the fuel costs being 25, you know, a quarter of the cost, the maintenance not being there. And aside from all of that, and it being cleaner and helpful for the environment, which we all should be concerned about, they are a pleasure to drive. They're just fun to drive. It's if you haven't driven an electric car, at least do that. Go to Tesla or some car dealer somewhere and ask to drive a fully electric car. You'll be amazed.
Roy Oldfield, would you like to close
Good
the
morning.
comment?
Good morning, Tim. I've been asked to thank you for this presentation this morning. And one of the questions that was given to me was, did I have an electric car? The answer is no, but I told Alan that my son-in-law has a all electric, the new Ford Mustang, which I understand is made in Mexico. And my daughter, his wife, drives a Chrysler Pacifica hybrid. So I have some knowledge of electric cars. I was also asked to give you a non-answerable question, but I'm sure you'll be able to give me the answer to that. And that is self-driving cars. When you demonstrated it coming up, pick up on the rainy day at the grocery store, what's the situation regarding stealing that car by somebody else?
Well, first of all, if somebody were to walk up to the car as it's moving, are you talking about when it's being summoned, or
well,
just in general?
You're standing at the door of the grocery store, it's raining, and your car's a few parking places away, and you summons it to come over and pick you up. So what would prevent somebody from stealing it?
Well, the doors would be locked for one thing. The doors don't unlock just because you're summoning the car across the lot. So if they did walk up to it, they wouldn't be able to get into it. The other thing is that to stop that process, to make it work, you have to hold your finger on the certain spot on your cell phone, like there's a little button to summon. And if you just even lift your finger off that for a second, the car stops and it's still locked. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So the car is locked. It can't be stolen.
Correct.
Okay. So that was an answerable question.
Yeah.
I think the update on the technology was phenomenal. I wasn't aware of all of the things that it could do. As far as self-driving cars are concerned, they still scare me, and I'm sure they scare an awful lot of other people. The one car that you didn't show on the list of cars that are being electric cars that are being manufactured by the large companies was Toyota. Where are they at with their development of electric cars?
So Roy, that's a loaded question. Toyota and Honda both had gone down the pathway for hydrogen power for vehicles. And I think that they corporately made a big commitment. And also in their respective countries, the government was all behind hydrogen. Turns out, hydrogen is great in theory, but it's not a good answer for consumer passenger vehicles. It's for a lot of reasons. You can look it up. Hydrogen is, yes, the most abundant thing in the world, but it's one of the slipperiest molecules you can imagine. It's expensive to produce. Virtually all of the cheap hydrogen that we have is a byproduct of the petrochemical industry. They only have it because they're making gasoline from crude oil. So to make clean hydrogen, you need something called, hydrolysis. That's not right. I'm saying it wrong. Hydrolysis. Anyway, it's basically done with electricity to separate hydrogen from the water molecule. And that takes a whole lot of electricity, which you could have put in the battery in the first place. Then you still have to ship it around like gasoline to gas stations. So yeah, it's a possible solution for heavy equipment. You might see it in transport trucks and trains, maybe even buses, I don't know, but not for passenger vehicles. And I probably drifted away from your question.
So is Toyota making a battery operated car?
They have one. And I think they're seeing the writing on the wall. Toyota, ironically, had more battery-powered cars on the road than anybody else, but they're all hybrids. And they led the way with that. The Prius was a booming, great car. It still is a good car, but it's a hybrid. And that's where that was the closest they got to electrification. I think they're turning the corner on it now, but if they don't, like some people are predicting Toyota's just in big trouble. Huge company, one of the biggest, and they're in huge trouble because they have not moved quickly enough. But we don't know what they're doing behind the scenes, so time will tell.
Well, I think your reference to Dick Tracy and the development that took place when we were all youngsters and looking at comic books and the developments we are today has certainly come to fruition. And again, I would like to thank you on behalf of the Oakville Probus Club for making this presentation to us today. It's the third time I've heard your presentation, and this one was quite different from the first two. Thank you again, and we look forward to the development of electric cars in the future.
Thanks, Roy, and really appreciate that. It's great to come back and see you all. If you ever are hard up for a speaker and you want to learn how to make whiskey, give me a call. I've got to talk all about my my experience with making whiskey and wine, and happy to share that with you sometime if you like.
Well, your company makes great stuff.
No, thank you. 40 Creek, yeah.
Will you bring samples, Tim?
Yeah, I'll email them right over.
Okay, right. Well, thank you very much, Roy, and thank you, Tim, for a very, very informative talk today. As Roy said, I've heard both of your previous, and I really enjoyed them, but this one was amazing. It certainly turned the corner for me in a lot of aspects that electrification is here, and it's here to stay, and it's really the leading edge, so we might as well get with the program. So if there's any other questions anyone has at this point, anything, anybody?
Just a comment. I think it's downright scary what's happening.
Well, that's what I thought when I first saw computers, so I will get over it. But anyway, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I want to thank you for taking the time, and I look forward to seeing you next month, hopefully at Trafalgar Park Community Center, because I said it was going to be open, and I'm sure that the Premier got my message, and he'll have it open for us next month. So thank you, and bye for now. See you next month. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
Thank you very much for running it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.